a WikiVidi documentaries production. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy. Scientology. Scientology is a body of religious beliefs and practices launched in May 1952 by American author L. Ron Hubbard. Hubbard initially developed a program of ideas called Dianetics, which was distributed through the Dianetics Foundation. The foundation soon entered bankruptcy, and Hubbard lost the rights to his seminal publication Dianetics, The Modern Science of Mental Health in 1952. He then recharacterized the subject as a religion, and renamed it Scientology, retaining the terminology, doctrines, the e-meter, and the practice of auditing. Within a year, he regained the rights to Dianetics and retained both subjects under the umbrella of the Church of Scientology. Hubbard describes the etymology of the word Scientology as coming from the Latin word, scio, meaning know or distinguish, and the Greek word logos, meaning the word or outward form by which the inward thought is expressed and made known. Hubbard writes, thus, Scientology means knowing about knowing, or science of knowledge. Hubbard's groups have encountered considerable opposition and controversy. In January 1951, the New Jersey Board of Medical Examiners brought proceedings against Dianetics Foundation on the charge of teaching medicine without a license. Hubbard's followers engaged in a program of criminal infiltration of the U.S. government. Hubbard-inspired organizations and their classification are often a point of contention. Germany classifies Scientology groups as an anti-constitutional sect. In France, they have been classified as a dangerous cult by some parliamentary reports. L. Ron Hubbard. L. Ron Hubbard was the only child of Harry Ross Hubbard, a United States Navy officer, and his wife, Ledora Waterbury. Hubbard spent 3 semesters at George Washington University, but was placed on probation in September 1931. He failed to return for the fall 1932 semester. In July 1941, Hubbard was commissioned as a lieutenant in the U.S. Naval Reserve. On May 18, 1943, his subchaser left Portland. That night, Hubbard ordered his crew to fire 35 depth charges and a number of gun rounds at what he believed were Japanese submarines. His ship sustained minor damage and 3 crew were injured. Having run out of depth charges and with the presence of a submarine still unconfirmed by other ships, Hubbard's ship was ordered back to port. A Navy report concluded that there was no submarine in the area. A decade later, Hubbard claimed in his Scientology lectures that he had sunk a Japanese submarine. On June 28, 1943, Hubbard ordered his crew to fire on the Coronado Islands. Hubbard apparently did not realize that the islands belonged to U.S. allied Mexico, nor that he had taken his vessel into Mexican territorial waters. He was reprimanded and removed from command on July 7. After reassignment to a naval facility in Monterey, California, Hubbard became depressed and fell ill, reporting stomach pains in April 1945. He spent the remainder of the war as a patient in Oak Knoll Naval Hospital in Oakland, California. According to his later teachings, during this time Hubbard made scientific breakthroughs by use of endocrine experiments. On October 15, 1947, Hubbard wrote a letter to the Veterans Administration formally requesting psychiatric treatment, but admitted that he was unable to afford it. Within a few years, Hubbard would condemn psychiatry as evil, which would grow into a major theme in Scientology. Excalibur and Babalon working. In April 1938, Hubbard reportedly reacted to a drug used in a dental procedure. According to his account, this triggered a revelatory near-death experience. Allegedly inspired by this experience, Hubbard composed a manuscript, which was never published, with the working titles of The One Command, or Excalibur. The contents of Excalibur formed the basis for some of his later publications. Arthur J. Burks, who read the work in 1938, later recalled it discussed the One Command to survive. This theme would be revisited in Dianetics, the set of ideas and practices regarding the metaphysical relationship between the mind and body, which became the central philosophy of Scientology. Hubbard later cited Excalibur as an early version of Dianetics. In August 1945, Hubbard moved into the Pasadena mansion of John Jack Whiteside Parsons, an avid occultist and Dilemati, follower of the English ceremonial magician Aleister Crowley, and leader of a lodge of Crowley's magical order, Ordo Templi Orientis. Parsons and Hubbard collaborated on the Babalon working, a sex magic ritual intended to summon an incarnation of Babalon, the supreme Vilemity goddess. The Church of Scientology admits to Hubbard's involvement with Parsons while claiming that it was for the purpose of naval intelligence. In the late 1940s, Hubbard practiced as a hypnotist and he worked in Hollywood posing as a swami. The church says that Hubbard's experience with hypnosis led him to create Dianetics. Dianetics. In May 1950, Hubbard's Dianetics, The Evolution of a Science was published by pulp magazine Astounding Science Fiction. In the same year, he published the book-length Dianetics, The Modern Science of Mental Health, considered the seminal event of the century by Scientologists. Scientologists sometimes use a dating system based on the book's publication. For example, AD 25 does not stand for Anno Domini, but, after Dianetics, Dianetics uses a counseling technique known as auditing, in which an auditor assists a subject in conscious recall of traumatic events in the individual's past. It was originally intended to be a new psychotherapy and was not expected to become the foundation for a new religion. Hubbard variously defined Dianetics as a spiritual healing technology and an organized science of thought. The stated intent is to free individuals of the influence of past traumas by systematic exposure and removal of the engrams these events have left behind, a process called clearing. Rutgers scholar Beryl Satter says that there was little that was original in Hubbard's approach, with much of the theory having origins in popular conceptions of psychology. Satter observes that in keeping with the typical 1950s distrust of emotion, Hubbard promised that Dianetic treatment would release and erase psychosomatic ills and painful emotions, thereby leaving individuals with increased powers of rationality. According to Gallagher and Ashcraft, in contrast to psychotherapy, Hubbard stated that Dianetics was more accessible to the average person, promised practitioners more immediate progress, and placed them in control of the therapy process. Hubbard's thought was parallel with the trend of humanist psychology at that time, which also came about in the 1950s. Parsons and Castillo write that the appeal of Dianetics was based on its consistency with prevailing values. Shortly after the introduction of Dianetics, Hubbard introduced the concept of the thetan, which he claimed to have discovered. Dianetics was organized and centralized to consolidate power under Hubbard, and groups that were previously recruited were no longer permitted to organize autonomously. Two of Hubbard's key supporters at the time were John W. Campbell Jr., the editor of Astounding Science Fiction, and Campbell's brother-in-law, physician Joseph A. Winter. Dr. Winter, hoping to have Dianetics accepted in the medical community, submitted papers outlining the principles and methodology of Dianetic therapy to the Journal of the American Medical Association and the American Journal of Psychiatry in 1949, but these were rejected. Dianetics, The Modern Science of Mental Health, spent 6 months on the New York Times bestseller list. According to religious studies professor Paul Gutjahr, Dianetics is the best-selling non-Christian religious book of the century. Publishers Weekly gave a posthumous plaque to Hubbard to commemorate Dianetics' appearance on its list of bestsellers for 100 weeks. Studies that address the topic of the origins of the work and its significance to Scientology as a whole include Peter Rowley's New Gods in America, Omar V. Garrison's The Hidden Story of Scientology, and Albert I. Berger's Towards a Science of the Nuclear Mind, Science Fiction Origins of Dianetics. More complex studies include Roy Wallace' The Road to Total Freedom. Dianetics appealed to a broad range of people who used instructions from the book and applied the method to each other, becoming practitioners themselves. Dianetics soon met with criticism. Morris Fishbane, the editor of the Journal of the American Medical Association and well known at the time as a debunker of quack medicine, dismissed Hubbard's book. An article in Newsweek stated that the Dianetics concept is unscientific and unworthy of discussion or review. Hubbard asserted that Dianetics is an organized science of thought built on definite axioms, statements of natural laws on the order of those of the physical sciences. Hubbard became the leader of a growing Dianetics movement. He became a popular lecturer, and established the Hubbard Dianetic Research Foundation in Elizabeth, New Jersey, where he trained his first Dianetics counselors or auditors. Some practitioners of Dianetics reported experiences which they believed had occurred in past lives or previous incarnations. In early 1951, Reincarnation became a subject of intense debate within the Dianetics community. Hubbard took the reports of past life events seriously, and introduced the concept of the thetan, an immortal being analogous to the soul. This was an important factor in the transition from secular Dianetics to the religion of Scientology. Sociologists Roy Wallace and Steve Bruce suggest that Dianetics, which set each person as his or her own authority, was about to fail due to its inherent individualism, and that Hubbard started Scientology as a religion to establish himself as the overarching authority. Also in 1951, Hubbard incorporated the electropsychometer, a kind of electrodermal activity meter, as an auditing aid. Based on a design by Volney Matheson, the device is held by Scientologists to be a useful tool in detecting changes in a person's state of mind. The global spread of Scientology at the latter half of the 1950s was culminated with the opening of churches in Johannesburg and Paris, while world headquarters transferred to England in St. Hill, a rural estate. Hubbard lived there for the next 7 years. Dianetics is different from Scientology in that Scientology is a religion while Dianetics is not. The purpose of Dianetics is the improvement of the individual or self being only one of 8 dynamics. Church of Scientology. In January 1951, the New Jersey Board of Medical Examiners began proceedings against the Hubbard Dianetic Research Foundation for teaching medicine without a license, which eventually led to that foundation's bankruptcy. In December 1952, the Hubbard Dianetic Foundation filed for bankruptcy, and Hubbard lost control of the Dianetics trademark and copyrights to financier Don Purcell. Author Russell Miller argues that Scientology was a development of undeniable expedience, since it ensured that he would be able to stay in business even if the courts eventually awarded control of Dianetics and its valuable copyrights to Purcell. L. Ron Hubbard originally intended for Scientology to be considered a science, as stated in his writings. In May 1952, Scientology was organized to put this intended science into practice, and in the same year, Hubbard published a new set of teachings as Scientology, a religious philosophy. Marco Frenschkowski quotes Hubbard in a letter written in 1953, to show that he never denied that his original approach was not a religious one. Probably the greatest discovery of Scientology and its most forceful contribution to mankind has been the isolation, description and handling of the human spirit, accomplished in July 1951, in Phoenix, Arizona. I established, along scientific rather than religious or humanitarian lines, that the thing which is the person, the personality, is separable from the body and the mind at will and without causing bodily death or derangement. In April 1953, Hubbard wrote a letter proposing that Scientology should be transformed into a religion. As membership declined and finances grew tighter, Hubbard had reversed the hostility to religion he voiced in Dianetics. His letter discussed the legal and financial benefits of religious status. Hubbard outlined a plan for setting up a chain of spiritual guidance centers, charging customers $500 for 24 hours of auditing. He wrote, in December 1953, Hubbard incorporated 3 churches: A Church of American Science, A Church of Scientology, and A Church of Spiritual Engineering, in Camden, New Jersey. On February 18, 1954, with Hubbard's blessing, some of his followers set up the first local Church of Scientology, the Church of Scientology of California, adopting the aims, purposes, principles and creed of the Church of American Science, as founded by L. Ron Hubbard. The movement spread quickly through the United States and to other English-speaking countries such as Britain, Ireland, South Africa, and Australia. The second local Church of Scientology to be set up, after the one in California, was in Auckland, New Zealand. In 1955, Hubbard established the founding Church of Scientology in Washington, D.C. The group declared that the founding church, as written in the Certificate of Incorporation for the founding Church of Scientology in the District of Columbia, was to act as a parent church for the religious faith known as Scientology and to act as a church for the religious worship of the faith. The church experienced further challenges. The United States Food and Drug Administration began an investigation concerning the claims the Church of Scientology made in connection with its e-meters. On January 4, 1963, FDA agents raided offices of the Church of Scientology, seizing hundreds of e-meters as illegal medical devices and tons of literature that they accused of making false medical claims. The original suit by the FDA to condemn the literature and e-meters did not succeed, but the court ordered the church to label every meter with a disclaimer that it is purely religious artifact, to post a $20,000 bond of compliance, and to pay the FDA's legal expenses. In the course of developing Scientology, Hubbard presented rapidly changing teachings that some have seen as often self-contradictory. According to Lindholm, for the inner cadre of Scientologists in that period, involvement depended not so much on belief in a particular doctrine, but on unquestioning faith in Hubbard. In 1966, Hubbard purportedly stepped down as executive director of Scientology to devote himself to research and writing. The following year, he formed the ship-based Sea Organization or Sea, which operated 3 ships, the Diana, the Athena, and the flagship the Apollo. 1 month after the establishment of the Sea, Hubbard announced that he had made a breakthrough discovery, the result of which were the OT3 materials purporting to provide a method for overcoming factors inhibiting spiritual progress. These materials were first disseminated on the ships, and then propagated by Sea Org members reassigned to staff advanced organizations on land. Brought to you by WikiVidi documentaries. Would you like to know more?